The marble floor was cold beneath her knees. 7-year-old Ellie Corleone pressed her palms flat against the polished stone, her thin frame trembling as security guards closed in from both sides. The Grand Celestial Hotel lobby glittered around her like a palace from a dream, all golden chandeliers and midnight silence. But she wasn't here to admire it. She was here to survive. "Please," she whispered, her voice cracking. "I'll clean the floors if I can stay. I'll be quiet. I promise." The guard to her left, a mountain of a man with a scar above his eyebrow, reached for her shoulder. Ellie flinched, squeezing her eyes shut, waiting for the rough grip that would drag her back into the freezing December night. But it never came. "Wait." The voice was quiet, calm, but it cut through the tension like a blade. Ellie's eyes snapped open. A man stepped out from behind one of the marble pillars, and for a moment, she forgot to breathe. He was young, maybe 30, with dark hair that fell slightly over his forehead and eyes so sharp they seemed to see straight through her. He wore a simple black sweater and jeans, nothing like the suited businessman she'd seen earlier, but something about the way he moved made the guards freeze instantly. "Sir," the scarred guard said, his tone suddenly respectful. Nervous, even. "We found her hiding behind the concierge desk. She's been here at least an hour." The man's gaze dropped to Ellie, and she felt her heart hammer against her ribs. She should run. She needed to run. But her legs wouldn't move, and those eyes, God, those eyes, pinned her in place like she was the only person in the world. "What's your name?" he asked softly. Ellie swallowed hard. Her throat was so dry it hurt. "Ellie. Ellie." He repeated it like he was testing how it sounded. Then he crouched down, lowering himself to her level, and the simple gesture made something crack inside her chest. Adults didn't do that. Adults didn't see her. "Why are you here, Ellie?" "Because I have nowhere else to go. Because the shelters are full. Because if I go back to the streets, he'll find me." But she couldn't say any of that. So instead, she lifted her chin, trying to be brave like her mom always told her to be, and said, "I'll work. I can clean. I'm good at it. I just need somewhere warm tonight." The man studied her for a long moment, and Ellie could feel the weight of his attention like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. He noticed things. The mud on her sneakers. The way her coat, 2 sizes too big, hung off her bony shoulders. The fading bruise on her wrist that she'd tried to hide under her sleeve. His jaw tightened. "When did you last eat?" he asked quietly. Ellie hesitated. "Yesterday, I think." A muscle in his cheek twitched. Then he stood, turning to the guards with an expression that could freeze fire. "Get her food. Hot chocolate. And a blanket." The scarred guard blinked. "Sir, the protocol." "Now, Marcus." "Wait. No, not Marcus. Now, Vincent." The man corrected himself, his voice dropping to something dangerously soft. Vincent paled and nodded quickly, gesturing for the other guard to follow him toward the hotel restaurant. Ellie stared up at the stranger, her mind spinning. Who was this guy? Guests didn't give orders to security. Guests didn't make grown men look scared with just a glance. The man turned back to her, and his expression softened, just slightly, like he was trying not to spook her. "You're safe here, Ellie. I promise." Safe. The word felt foreign. Dangerous. Because the last time someone promised her safety, she'd woken up locked in a basement. "Who are you?" she whispered. He hesitated, and for just a second, something vulnerable flickered across his face. Then he smiled, small and sad and real, and said, "Someone who understands what it's like to be cold and scared." Before Ellie could respond, Vincent returned with a tray. Chicken soup. Fresh bread. A steaming mug of hot chocolate topped with whipped cream. The smell hit her like a physical force, and her stomach twisted so violently she almost whimpered. The man took the tray and set it on a nearby coffee table, then gestured for her to sit on the plush velvet couch. Ellie climbed up slowly, half convinced this was a dream, or worse, a trap. But when she lifted the spoon to her lips and tasted that first warm, salty bite of soup, tears spilled down her cheeks before she could stop them. The man sat across from her, silent, watching her eat like it was the most important thing in the world. He didn't rush her, didn't ask questions, just waited. When she finally finished, he leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. "Ellie, I need you to tell me the truth. Are you running from someone or running to something?" Her breath caught. How did he know? She looked down at her hands, at the dirt still caked under her fingernails. "I can't go back. Back where? To him. The air in the lobby seemed to drop 10 degrees. The man's voice turned lethal. Who's him? Ellie shook her head, panic rising in her chest. I can't, he'll find me. He always finds me. And if he knows I told someone. Ellie. The man's hand covered hers, warm and steady and impossibly gentle. Look at me. She did. No one is going to hurt you. Not tonight. Not ever again. Do you understand? And the terrifying thing was, she believed him. But believing in miracles had never saved her before. You don't know him, she whispered. You don't know what he's capable of. The man's smile turned sharp, cold, like winter itself had taken human form. Then let me introduce myself properly, he said softly. My name is Ethan Dawson, and I own this hotel. Ellie's heart stopped. The Ethan Dawson, the ghost CEO, the man so powerful and so private that most employees had never even seen his face. And he was sitting 3 feet away from her, promising to keep her safe. Now, Ethan said, his voice dropping to something deadly calm. Tell me who I need to protect you from. Ellie opened her mouth, and the lobby doors exploded inward. Hey, beautiful souls. Welcome back to the channel. Where are you watching from? Drop your city in the comments. I love hearing from you all. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button because this story, it's about to get wild. And if you're already part of the family, you know what's coming. Buckle up. The man who stepped through the shattered glass doors wasn't what Ellie expected. He was ordinary, medium height, graying hair, wire-rimmed glasses perched on a forgettable face. He wore a maintenance uniform, the kind that made people invisible in places like this. But the smile on his lips was wrong. Too wide, too knowing. There you are, sweetheart, he said, his voice syrupy sweet. Grandpa's been looking everywhere for you. Ellie's blood turned to ice. Ethan was on his feet instantly, positioning himself between her and the door. His posture shifted, relaxed elegance replaced by something coiled and dangerous. The hotel is closed to unauthorized personnel, he said, his tone arctic. Leave. Now. The man's smile widened. I think there's been a misunderstanding. That's my granddaughter. She has a condition. Runs away sometimes. Scares us half to death. He took a step forward, glass crunching under his shoes. Come on, Ellie. Let's go home. Home. The word made bile rise in her throat. Ethan didn't move. She's not going anywhere with you. Sir, I appreciate your concern, but this is a family matter. Vincent, Ethan called without turning. Call the police. Tell them we have an intruder making claims about a minor. And get building security footage from the past 3 hours. The man's expression flickered, just for a second, and Ellie saw what hid beneath the mask. Rage. Cold, calculating rage. You're making a mistake, the man said softly. Am I? Ethan tilted his head. Because I'm looking at a man who just broke into my hotel, through locked doors, at 2 in the morning. A man who claims to be this child's grandfather, but doesn't know that she's been here for hours without anyone filing a missing persons report. He smiled, and it was terrifying. Would you like to revise your story? The silence stretched like a wire about to snap. Then the man laughed, a sound like cracking bones. You have no idea what you're protecting, Mr. Dawson. No idea what she's worth. What she's worth. Ethan's eyes narrowed. Get out of my hotel. You have 30 seconds before I have you arrested for breaking and entering, stalking a minor, and whatever else my lawyers can think of. For a moment, Ellie thought the man would charge forward. His hands flexed at his sides, and something metallic glinted at his waist. But then Vincent appeared with 4 more security guards, and the man's smile returned. Colder now. Promising. This isn't over, he said, looking directly at Ellie. I'll see you soon, sweetheart. Then he turned and walked out through the broken doors, disappearing into the darkness like smoke. Ellie realized she was shaking. No, she was convulsing, her entire body racked with tremors she couldn't control. Her vision blurred. Sounds became distant and muffled, and suddenly she couldn't breathe, couldn't think, couldn't. Ellie. Ethan's voice cut through the panic. He was in front of her again, kneeling, his hands hovering near her shoulders, but not touching. Look at me. Just me. Can you do that? She focused on his eyes. Dark brown. Steady. Real. Good. Now breathe with me. In. 2, 3, 4. Out. 2, 3, 4. She followed his rhythm, matching his breath until the world slowly came back into focus. That's it, he murmured. You're okay. You're safe. He knows I'm here, she whispered. He'll come back. He always comes back. Let him try. Ethan's voice was granite. Ellie, I need you to trust me. Can you do that? Trust. Such a small word for such an impossible thing. But when she looked into his eyes, she saw something she hadn't seen in so long she'd forgotten what it looked like. Genuine concern. Not pity. Not manipulation. Just care. She nodded. Good. Ethan stood, pulling out his phone. Vincent, take Ellie to the owner's suite. Top floor. No one gets up there without my explicit authorization. Post guards at the elevator and stairwell access points. Sir, Vincent said carefully, shouldn't we contact child services? Or, at 3 in the morning? So she can spend the night in an overcrowded system while that man tracks her location. Ethan's voice could cut glass. She stays here. Under my protection. Anyone has a problem with that, they can discuss it with me directly. Vincent nodded quickly and gestured for Ellie to follow him. But as she stood, Ethan caught her hand, so gently she barely felt it. Ellie, he said quietly, that man. He said you were worth something. What did he mean? She wanted to lie, to protect him from the truth. But something about Ethan made her believe that lies would only make things worse. My mom, she whispered. Before she died, she gave me something. A key. She said people would come looking for it. Dangerous people. Her voice cracked. She said I should never, ever tell anyone I had it. Ethan's expression didn't change, but his grip on her hand tightened fractionally. Where is the key now? Ellie reached into her coat and pulled out a thin chain around her neck. Dangling from it was a small, old-fashioned key, brass, intricate, with symbols etched along its surface that looked almost like coordinates. Ethan stared at it like she'd just pulled out a live grenade. How long has he been chasing you? He asked quietly. 6 months. Since Mom died. Tears burned her eyes. I've been running ever since. Different cities. Different shelters. But he always finds me. Always. Not anymore. Ethan's voice was steel-wrapped in silk. Vincent, change of plans. Presidential suite. And I want Marcus on her door personally. Sir, Marcus is. I know exactly who he is and what he's capable of. Ethan looked at Vincent with an expression that made the security chief take a step back. That's why I want him there. As Vincent led her toward the elevators, Ellie looked back at Ethan one last time. He was already on his phone, his voice too low to hear, but his body language spoke volumes. This wasn't just a wealthy man helping a lost child. This was someone preparing for war. The presidential suite was larger than every place Ellie had ever lived combined. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the sleeping city, and the furniture looked like it belonged in a museum. Vincent had left her with Marcus, the scarred guard from earlier, who now stood outside her door like a statue. But Ellie couldn't sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw that man smile. Heard his voice promising he'd see her soon. She sat on the edge of the enormous bed, holding the key her mother had died protecting, and wondered what could possibly be worth all this suffering. A soft knock made her jump. It's me. Ethan's voice came through the door. Can I come in? She nodded, then remembered he couldn't see her. Yes. He entered carrying a tray with warm milk and cookies, the kind that looked homemade, not hotel kitchen perfect. He'd changed into a fresh sweater, and his hair was slightly damp, like he'd just showered away the night's chaos. But his eyes were still sharp, still calculating. Couldn't sleep either? He asked, setting the tray on the coffee table. Ellie shook her head. Ethan sat across from her, and for a moment, they just existed in the silence. Then he said, I need to tell you something. About who I am. About why I'm helping you. Her heart stuttered. Okay. My parents died when I was 9, he began quietly. Car accident. I went into the foster system, and for 3 years, I bounced between homes. Some were fine. Some were. His jaw tightened. Not fine. When I was 12, I ran away. Lived on the streets for 6 months before someone found me. Ellie stared at him. This billionaire CEO had been like her. The man who found me was Richard Celestial, the original owner of this hotel. He took me in, gave me a home, an education, a future. Ethan's voice softened. He saved my life. And when he died, he left me everything. The hotel, his fortune, his legacy. Why are you telling me this? Ellie whispered. Because I see myself in you, he said simply. And because I know what it's like to carry something that makes you a target. Richard didn't just leave me a hotel, Ellie. He left me secrets. Dangerous ones. The kind that powerful people would kill for. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a photograph. Old, edges worn. It showed a young Richard Celestial standing next to another man, both of them holding drinks and smiling. But behind them, barely visible, was a wall safe with symbols etched on its surface. Symbols that matched the ones on Ellie's key. Her breath caught. You know what this is? Not exactly, Ethan admitted. But I know your mother. Or rather, I know of her. Sarah Corleone. She worked for Richard 15 years ago. She was his archivist, the only person he trusted with his most valuable documents. Ellie's world tilted. You knew my mom? I met her once, when I was younger. She was kind, brilliant, and she disappeared without explanation right after Richard died. Ethan leaned forward. Ellie, I think your mother took something from Richard's collection. Something someone very powerful wants back. And I think that key opens the safe where she hid it. But why would she steal from someone who helped you? Ellie asked, confused. Because, a new voice said from the doorway, she wasn't stealing. She was protecting it. Ellie spun around. A woman stood in the entrance, tall, elegant, with silver-streaked black hair and eyes that matched Ethan's intensity. She wore a burgundy dress that screamed old money, and she moved into the room like she owned it. Which, Ellie realized with growing shock, she probably did. Ellie, Ethan said carefully, this is Victoria Ripley. She's the hotel COO, Victoria finished, her gaze locked on Ellie. And someone who's been looking for that key for a very long time. She turned to Ethan. You should have called me immediately. I don't take orders from you. Victoria, Ethan said coolly. No, but you take advice from people who've kept this hotel running while you played Ghost CEO. Victoria's smile was sharp. That man downstairs, the one claiming to be her grandfather? His name is Thomas Way. He's a broker for private collectors, the kind who deal in stolen art, classified documents, and things that governments would prefer stay buried. Ellie's blood ran cold. How do you know that? Victoria's expression softened, just barely. Because 15 years ago, I helped your mother hide what Richard entrusted to her. And I've been trying to keep you safe ever since. The room went silent. Ethan stood slowly, and Ellie could see the betrayal flashing across his face. You knew about this? All this time you knew. What was I supposed to do? Victoria's voice cracked with rare emotion. Tell you that the man who saved your life was protecting evidence of corporate espionage that goes straight to the highest levels of government? That Sarah died because she refused to hand it over? Ellie felt like she was drowning. My mom didn't die in an accident, did she? Victoria's silence was answer enough. They killed her, Ellie whispered. And now they're coming for me. No. Ethan's voice was absolute. They're not. Because I'm not Richard, and I'm not going to let history repeat itself. He turned to Victoria. What's in the safe? Financial records. Communications. Proof that Meridian Group, one of the largest investment firms in the world, has been laundering money through luxury properties for decades, including this hotel, before Richard bought it outright and cleaned house. Victoria looked at Ellie with something like respect. Your mother spent years gathering evidence. Enough to bring down the entire organization. And they'll never stop looking for it, Ethan said quietly. No, Victoria agreed. They won't. Ellie clutched the key so hard it hurt. Her mother had died for this. Had spent her last moments making sure Ellie understood how important it was to keep it safe. But she was 7 years old. And she was so tired of running. Then we give it to them, she said suddenly. Both adults stared at her. We give them what they want. Ellie continued, her voice stronger now. And we end this. Ethan crouched in front of her, his eyes searching hers. Ellie, these people are dangerous. I know. She met his gaze. But my mom didn't die so I could spend my whole life hiding. She died so the truth could come out. Her voice broke. Help me finish what she started. Please. Ethan looked at her for a long moment. Then he smiled, fierce and proud and devastating. Okay, he said. Let's bring them down. The plan was insane. That's what Ellie thought as she sat in Ethan's private office 3 floors below the presidential suite, watching him and Victoria argue over blueprints and security protocols. We can't just hand over the evidence, Victoria insisted, her fingers drumming against the mahogany desk. The moment Way gets what he wants, there's nothing stopping him from eliminating loose ends. Which is why we don't give him the real evidence, Ethan countered. He pulled up a holographic display, because of course billionaires had those, showing the hotel's underground vault system. We make a copy, plan enough authentic documents to pass inspection, but keep the originals secure. And you think Wei won't notice? Victoria raised an eyebrow. He will. Eventually. Ethan's smile was cold. But by then, the real evidence will be in the hands of people who can actually do something with it. Ellie watched them work, fascinated by their dynamic. They moved like chess players, anticipating moves, countering strategies, never quite trusting but forced to cooperate. And underneath it all, she sensed history, old wounds that hadn't quite healed. "How long have you two known each other?" she asked suddenly. They both froze. Victoria recovered first, her expression smoothing into neutrality. "I've worked at this hotel for 20 years. I knew Ethan when he was a teenager who couldn't tie his own tie. She taught me everything Richard didn't," Ethan added, but there was something careful in his voice. "Business, strategy, how to survive in a world that wants to eat you alive. And yet you still don't trust me," Victoria said quietly. "Can you blame me?" Ethan's voice hardened. "You kept this from me for 15 years. Let me run this hotel thinking I was honoring Richard's legacy when the whole time I was protecting you from becoming another casualty," Victoria snapped. "You were 19 when Richard died, Ethan. A kid. You think I wanted you to know that the empire you inherited was built on cleaning up other people's crimes?" The air crackled with tension. Ellie cleared her throat. "My mom trusted you," she said to Victoria. "She must have had a reason." Victoria's expression softened. Sarah was brilliant and brave, and she believed that some truths were worth dying for. She looked at Ellie with sudden intensity. "But she also made me promise that if anything happened to her, I'd keep you safe, no matter what." "Then help us," Ellie pleaded. "Help us finish this so I don't have to run anymore." Victoria studied her for a long moment, then sighed. "The safe is in the hotel's original foundation, a vault Richard built before he even opened for business. Only 3 keys exist. Sarah had one. Richard left one to Ethan. And the third—" She hesitated. "The third was supposed to be destroyed. But it wasn't," Ethan guessed. "No, Wei has it. Which means he can access the vault anytime he wants, if he can get past hotel security and figure out where it's hidden." Ellie's mind raced. "So we're in a race. Either we get to the evidence first and expose everything, or Wei gets it and buries it forever. Along with anyone who knows it exists," Victoria added grimly. A knock at the door interrupted them. Marcus entered, his expression grave. "Sir, we have a problem. Wei just checked into room 847. Used a fake name, but facial recognition flagged him." Ethan's jaw tightened. "He's inside the hotel. And he brought friends," Marcus continued. "4 men, all with military backgrounds. All armed." The room went silent. "This is my fault," Ellie whispered. "I let him here. I should leave." "You're not going anywhere," Ethan said firmly. He turned to Marcus. "Lock down the vault level. No one gets access without my biometric authorization. And I want eyes on Wei and his team every second." "Already done, sir." As Marcus left, Victoria moved to the window, staring out at the city lights. "He's going to force our hand. Make us come to him." "Then we don't give him the chance," Ethan said. He looked at Ellie. "How well can you remember your mother's instructions? Anything she said about the key, about where to use it?" Ellie closed her eyes, reaching back through memories that hurt to touch. Her mother's last night. The fever, the desperation in her voice. "The key opens more than locks, baby. It opens truth. When you're ready, when you're safe, find the place where water meets stone, where the first guest slept. That's where you'll understand." "Water meets stone," Ellie repeated slowly. "Where the first guest slept." Ethan and Victoria exchanged glances. "The original presidential suite," Victoria breathed. "Before the renovation. Richard kept the old room sealed off, said it held too many memories." "That's not on any current floor plans," Ethan said, already moving. He pulled up older blueprints, dating back to the hotel's opening in 1952. There, a suite marked on the 32nd floor that no longer existed in modern layouts. They built over it, Victoria realized. When they expanded the West Wing, they sealed it behind new construction. "But the room still exists," Ethan finished. "And if Sarah hid something there." He looked at Ellie with new respect. "Your mother was protecting more than evidence. She was protecting the context. The story behind the story." A loud crack echoed through the building, distant but unmistakable. Gunfire. Ethan's phone exploded with alerts. Wei's team just breached the vault level. They're going for the safe. That's impossible, Victoria said. The biometric locks can be bypassed if you have the right equipment and enough money, Ethan growled. He grabbed Ellie's hand. We're out of time. We need to get to that sealed room now, before Wei realizes the vault's a decoy. They ran through marble corridors and service elevators, past startled guests and confused staff. Marcus appeared with 2 more guards, forming a protective barrier around Ellie as they climbed hidden staircases that even most employees didn't know existed. The 32nd floor was dark, abandoned. The air tasted like dust and forgotten years. Victoria led them to what looked like a solid wall, but when Ethan pressed a specific sequence of panels, a door swung open, revealing a room frozen in time. 1950s furniture, a bed with the covers still turned down, and on the far wall, above an old stone fireplace where water dripped from a crack in the ceiling, a portrait of Richard Celestial, young, smiling, and standing next to a woman who looked exactly like Ellie's mother. Ellie's breath caught. That's impossible. Mom would have been. That's not your mother, Victoria whispered. That's your grandmother, Sarah's mother. She turned to Ellie with wonder in her eyes. You're not just protecting Richard's legacy. You're protecting your own family's story. And suddenly, everything clicked into place. What secrets did Ellie's family keep? Comment your theories. And smash that subscribe button because the truth comes out and nothing will ever be the same. Gemstone. Ellie couldn't breathe. The woman in the portrait had her eyes. Her smile. The same slight dimple in her left cheek that Ellie saw every time she looked in a mirror. Eleanor Castellano, Victoria said softly, reading the brass plaque beneath the painting. Richard's first love. She died in 1955, 3 years after the hotel opened. Ethan added, his voice quiet with realization. Richard never talked about her, never mentioned her name. I always thought that he was married to his work. Victoria's laugh was bitter. No, he was married to grief. Eleanor was everything to him. And when she died, she trailed off, looking at Ellie with something between pity and awe. Your mother never told you. Told me what? Ellie's voice cracked. That you're Richard's great-granddaughter. The room spun. Ethan caught Ellie's arm as her knees buckled, steadying her against the dusty furniture. That's impossible, he said, but his voice lacked conviction. Richard never had children. His estate was left to you because he had no direct heirs, Victoria interrupted. Or so he claimed. But Eleanor was pregnant when she died. The baby survived, a daughter named Catherine. Richard gave her up for adoption, convinced he couldn't raise a child alone. He spent the rest of his life trying to protect her from afar. Catherine Corleone, Ellie whispered. My grandmother. She died when I was 3. And your mother spent her entire adult life working here, trying to understand why her grandmother's name was erased from history. Victoria continued. That's why Richard hired her. Why he trusted her. He knew exactly who she was. And when he realized he was dying, he told her everything, including what was hidden in this hotel. Evidence that proved Eleanor's death wasn't an accident. The temperature in the room plummeted. What are you saying? Ethan's voice was dangerous now. Victoria moved to the fireplace where water still dripped steadily from the ceiling crack. She pressed against a specific stone, and with a grinding sound, the entire fireplace swung inward, revealing a hidden chamber. Inside was a small safe, its surface covered in the same symbols as Ellie's key. Eleanor Castellano discovered that Meridian Group was using the hotel as a front for money laundering in its opening year, Victoria said. She found documents, recorded conversations. She was going to go to the police. Her voice dropped. They murdered her, staged it as a medical emergency. Richard knew. He always knew, but he couldn't prove it. So he built his entire empire into a trap, collecting evidence year after year, waiting for the right moment to bring them down. But he died before he could. Ethan breathed, and passed the responsibility to Sarah. Victoria finished. Who passed it to Ellie? Ellie stared at the safe, her mother's key burning against her chest. 70 years of secrets. 3 generations of women carrying the weight of truth. Open it, she said suddenly. Ethan looked at her. Ellie, open it. I need to see what they died for. With trembling hands, Ellie removed the key from around her neck. Ethan produced his own key from inside his jacket, identical except for a small variation in the symbols. Together, they inserted both keys into the dual locks. The safe clicked open. Inside were files, dozens of them. But on top, in a sealed envelope marked for my daughter, was a letter in Richard's handwriting. Ethan handed it to Ellie, and she read it aloud, her voice shaking. If you're reading this, then I am gone, and the burden has passed to you. I'm sorry. You deserved better than a grandfather who was too broken to claim you, a legacy built on revenge, and enemies who will stop at nothing to bury the truth. But you also deserve to know that Eleanor loved you before you were even born. That every choice I made, every sacrifice, was to build a world where her death would mean something, where justice would finally be served. The evidence in this safe will destroy Meridian Group, but it will also destroy lives, reputations, families. Use it wisely, my dear Catherine, and know that wherever I am so very proud of you. Tears streamed down Ellie's face. He wrote this for my grandmother. She never got to read it, because she died before Richard did, Victoria said gently. So Sarah took up the mission instead. And now, an explosion rocked the building. The lights flickered and died, plunging them into darkness broken only by emergency lighting. Ethan's phone buzzed frantically. Wei breached the vault, he said grimly, reading the alerts. Found it empty. And now he's heading toward the 32nd floor. He looked up, his eyes fierce in the red emergency lights. He knows we're here. How? Ellie demanded. Because I told him. They spun around. Marcus stood in the doorway, a gun in his hand, his expression apologetic but resolved. I'm sorry, sir. But Meridian pays better than you do. Always has. Ethan's face went cold. How long? Since the beginning. I was assigned to watch you when Richard first took you in. Make sure you didn't get curious about the wrong things. Marcus gestured with the gun. The evidence. Now, Marcus, Victoria said carefully, you don't have to do this. We can protect you. From Meridian? No one can protect me from them. No one. He cocked the gun. The evidence. Or the girl dies first. Ellie watched Ethan's face transform. Gone was the kind man who'd fed her soup and promised safety. In his place was someone carved from ice and fury. Someone who'd survived streets and foster homes and loneliness to build an empire. Someone who did not lose. You want the evidence? Ethan said quietly. Take it. He grabbed the files and threw them at Marcus. Papers exploded into the air, documents scattering across the dusty floor. Marcus flinched, instinctively trying to catch them. And Ethan moved. He was across the room in 2 seconds, faster than Ellie would have thought possible. His hand clamped around Marcus's wrist, twisting until the gun clattered to the floor. They went down together in a tangle of limbs and violence. Ellie, run! Victoria shouted, grabbing her hand. But Ellie couldn't move. Couldn't look away from Ethan fighting for his life against someone he'd trusted. Marcus was bigger, trained, brutal. But Ethan fought like someone who'd learned survival on streets where mercy meant death. A fist connected with Ethan's jaw. He staggered back, blood on his lip. And then Wei appeared in the doorway with 3 armed men. Enough, Wei said calmly. He pointed a gun directly at Ellie. The evidence, Mr. Dawson. Or we start with the child and work our way up. Ethan froze, breathing hard, his eyes locked on Ellie. And in that moment, she saw him make a choice. Okay, Ethan said hoarsely. Okay, you win. Ethan raised his hands slowly, blood trickling from the corner of his mouth. Smart man, Wei said, his gun never wavering from Ellie. Collect the documents. All of them. Victoria moved to gather the scattered papers, her hands shaking. Ellie watched helplessly as 70 years of evidence, 3 generations of sacrifice, was handed over to the very people it was meant to destroy. The safe too, Wei continued. I want everything Richard collected. Every file, every recording, every scrap of proof. Ethan's jaw tightened, but he nodded to Victoria. She removed the remaining contents, thick manila folders, USB drives, even old cassette tapes, and placed them in the bag one of Wei's men held out. Good, Wei said. Then he turned his gun on Ethan. Now the keys. The keys open nothing without biometric access, Ethan said coldly. The safe's already open. You have what you want. Wei smiled. I have what Richard collected. But I know you, Mr. Dawson. You're too paranoid to keep everything in one place. There are copies, backups, insurance policies hidden in whatever holes you've carved out of this hotel. He cocked the gun. The keys will help me find them. And if I refuse, then I kill everyone in this room. Burn this hotel to the ground. and spend the next decade tracking down every person who ever knew Richard Celestial. Way's voice was pleasant, conversational, starting with your staff, your business partners, every child and every orphanage you've ever donated to. He tilted his head. How many lives is your pride worth, Mr. Dawson? Ellie saw the defeat in Ethan's eyes. The calculation. He was cornered, and they both knew it. Slowly, Ethan reached into his jacket and pulled out his key. Ellie clutched hers. No, she whispered. Ellie, Ethan said gently, give him the key. But my mom. Your mom wanted you alive. His voice cracked. Please, give him the key. Tears burned her eyes as she lifted the chain over her head. Her last connection to her mother. The only thing she had left. Way snatched it from her hand, examining both keys with satisfaction. Marcus, secure them. We're leaving. Marcus moved forward with zip ties, roughly pulling Ethan's arms behind his back. Then victorious. When he reached Ellie, his hands were almost gentle, but his eyes were hollow. I'm sorry, kid, he muttered. Wrong place, wrong time. They were forced to their knees while Way's men worked, securing them to the old radiator pipes along the wall. Ellie's wrists burned where the plastic cut into her skin. Way pocketed the keys and the bag of evidence, then pulled out a small device, sleek, black, with a timer display. He set it on the mantelpiece above the fireplace. What is that? Victoria demanded. Insurance, Way said simply. In 30 minutes, this room and everything in it will cease to exist. By the time anyone realizes what happened, we'll be out of the country. He looked at Ethan with something almost like respect. You played the game well, Mr. Dawson. But Meridian always wins in the end. You're going to murder a child? Ethan's voice was raw. She's 7 years old. She's a loose end, Way interrupted. Just like her mother. Just like her grandmother. The Castellano bloodline has been a thorn in our side for 70 years. Time to finally pluck it out. He turned to leave, then paused. Oh, and Marcus? Make sure the doors are sealed. I'd hate for them to have false hope. Marcus hesitated, just for a second, then nodded. The door slammed shut. A lock clicked. And then there was only silence and the steady tick of the timer. 29 minutes. Ethan, Victoria said urgently, your phone. Marcus took it when we were fighting. Ethan's voice was hollow. He tested his restraints, but they didn't budge. Yours? Same. Ellie looked around the room desperately. Dusty furniture. The open safe. The portrait of her great-grandmother smiling down at them like she'd known this moment was coming. Water meets stone. The words echoed in Ellie's mind. Her mother's last instruction. Water still dripped from that crack in the ceiling, pooling on the floor near the fireplace. Ethan, she said suddenly, that water. Where's it coming from? He looked up, following her gaze. The floor above us. Must be a pipe leak. Or an old pool. Victoria breathed. This hotel had a rooftop pool in the 50s. They drained it when they renovated, but the pipes are still there. Ethan finished. His eyes widened. Ellie, you're brilliant. 26 minutes. If we can break that crack wider, Ethan said rapidly. Flood this room. The water pressure might burst the door seals. Or we drown trying, Victoria pointed out. That's insane. You have a better idea? Silence. I can reach the fireplace, Ellie said. She was the smallest, her restraints tied to the lowest pipe. If I stretch. No, Ethan said sharply. You could dislocate your shoulder. Better than exploding. She stretched. Pain screamed through her arms as the zip ties cut deeper, but her fingers brushed the edge of the fireplace. Not enough. She needed something to pry at the crack with. Her eyes landed on the portrait frame. Metal corners. Sharp edges. The painting, she gasped. I can reach the painting. Victoria understood immediately. The frame's metal. If you can knock it down. Ellie strained, every muscle burning. Her vision blurred with pain, but she managed to hook her fingers on the portrait's lower edge. She pulled. Eleanor Castellano crashed to the floor. The frame splintered, exposing the metal corners Ellie had seen. She grabbed one, ignoring the blood on her palms, and stretched toward the ceiling crack. 23 minutes. That's it, Ethan coached. Just a little more. The metal corner bit into the crack. Ellie twisted, using all her weight, all her desperation. The crack widened. Water began to pour instead of drip. Keep going, Victoria urged. Ellie sobbed with effort, tearing at the ceiling like her life depended on it. Because it did. They all did. The crack split further. Water gushed now, cold and relentless. And with it came something else, a sound like groaning metal. The old pool structure above them was failing. "It's working," Ethan said, hope flooding his voice. "Ellie, get back." The ceiling exploded. Water crashed down in a deluge, filling the room with shocking speed. Ellie screamed as the cold hit her, but the water also loosened something. The old radiator pipe she was tied to, corroded by decades of moisture. It broke free from the wall. "Ethan," she shouted, dragging her restraints toward him. He understood immediately. The metal from the frame, use it on the zip ties. She sawed frantically while water rose around them. Ankles, knees, waist. 19 minutes. The plastic finally gave way. Ethan's hands were free. He immediately turned to Victoria, then to Ellie, ripping through their restraints with desperate strength. The water was at their chests now. The sealed door groaned, but held. "We're not going to make it," Victoria whispered. Ethan looked at the bomb, at the door, at Ellie, and then he smiled, fierce and determined and unbroken. "Yes," he said, "we are." "The bomb," Ethan said, grabbing Ellie's shoulders. "The water will short-circuit it. Or trigger it early," Victoria countered, water now at her neck. "It's a shaped charge, designed for precision, not water resistance." Ethan was already moving, diving under the rising flood toward the mantelpiece. "Trust me." He surfaced, gasping, the device in his hands. Water poured into its seams, and the digital display flickered. 17 minutes. 16. 15. Then it went dark. "Everyone against the door," Ethan shouted. "When the pressure equalizes." The door exploded outward. Water rushed into the hallway in a massive wave, carrying them with it. Ellie tumbled through the flood, her lungs burning, hands grasping for anything solid. Someone caught her, Victoria, and pulled her up as the water drained through elevator shafts and stairwells. They lay gasping on the soaked carpet, drenched and shaking but alive. "Elevator," Ethan croaked, already moving. "Way's heading for the underground garage. If he leaves this hotel, the evidence is gone forever," Victoria finished. They ran, leaving wet footprints through the emergency-lit corridors. Ethan's face was set with determination, but Ellie could see the calculation in his eyes. Way had armed men. They had nothing. Nothing except rage and desperation and the element of surprise. The elevator descended in tense silence. When the doors opened to the garage level, Ethan held up a hand, listening. Voices echoed from the north section. "Ways, giving orders. Engine starting. Stay behind me," Ethan whispered to Ellie. "No," she said, surprising herself. "He wants me. I'm the bait." "Absolutely not." "Ethan." Victoria's voice was quiet but firm. "She's right. And we're out of time." Ellie could see the war in his eyes, the need to protect her fighting against cold, tactical reality. Finally, he nodded. "You walk out first," he said. "Unarmed. Helpless. Make him think we're surrendering. Victoria and I will flank from the maintenance corridors. There are blind spots in his position." He cupped her face gently. "But the second things go wrong, you run. Understand?" Ellie nodded, even though she knew she wouldn't. Running was what she'd done for 6 months. Running was what got her mother killed. This time, she was standing her ground. She stepped out into the garage, arms raised, her small voice echoing off concrete. "Mr. Way, don't leave. I want to make a deal." The voices stopped. Footsteps approached. Way emerged from behind a black SUV, Marcus and 2 other men flanking him. His expression shifted from surprise to amusement. "The little rat who wouldn't drown," he said. "Where are your protectors, child?" "Dead." Ellie lied, letting her voice break. "The bomb, the water, they didn't make it." Tears came easily now. Real ones. For her mother. For her grandmother. For everyone Meridian had destroyed. "Please. I don't care about the evidence anymore. I just want to live." Way studied her, and Ellie could see him calculating. Could she really have escaped alone? Where would Ethan and Victoria be if not with her? "Marcus," Way said finally. "Check the..." Marcus never finished turning around. Ethan emerged from the shadows like vengeance itself, slamming into the traitor with a flying tackle that sent them both crashing into a concrete pillar. The gun went flying. Chaos erupted. Victoria appeared from the opposite side, using a fire extinguisher as a weapon. White foam exploded across the garage as she swung it into one guard's face, then used it to block the second guard's reaching hands. Way grabbed for Ellie, but she was already moving, diving under the SUV. He cursed, abandoning her to reach for his own weapon. But Ethan was faster. He'd gotten Marcus's gun. Now he aimed it directly at Wei, his hand steady despite the blood streaming from a reopened cut on his face. "It's over," Ethan said quietly. Wei smiled. "Is it? You have one gun. I have resources you can't imagine. Kill me, and Meridian sends 10 more. 20 more. They'll never stop. Good thing I'm not planning to kill you, then," Ethan said. Then he raised his voice. "Agent Morrison, I believe you have what you need." The garage filled with light and sound. Federal agents poured in from every entrance. FBI, by their jackets, surrounding Wei and his men with tactical precision. A woman in a dark suit approached, her ID held high. "Thomas Wei, you're under arrest for murder, conspiracy, money laundering, and about 15 other charges we've been building for the past 3 years." She smiled coldly. "Thanks for gift-wrapping the evidence." Wei's face went white. "That's impossible. The files were copies," Victoria said, emerging from the foam with her hair wild and her dress ruined but her smile triumphant. "Good copies. Great copies, even." But Richard was paranoid. "The real evidence has been in FBI custody since the day he died. We've just been waiting for you to make your move, to prove that Meridian was still operational and still dangerous. You see," Ethan added, lowering the gun as agents moved in to restrain Wei. Richard Celestial wasn't just collecting evidence. He was building a case, one that required patience, strategy, and someone desperate enough to expose themselves completely trying to stop it. Wei lunged, but agents had him in seconds. As they dragged him away, he screamed, "The girl. She has the key." "The real key to what?" Agent Morrison pulled out an evidence bag. Inside were 2 ornate brass keys. "These? We've had them since Richard's executor turned them over. What you stole tonight were replicas." She looked at Ellie with something like respect. "Very convincing replicas, I might add." Ellie emerged from under the SUV, and suddenly everything made sense. The careful way Ethan had staged their escape. Victoria's convenient knowledge of exactly where to find them. The way they'd let Wei think he was winning. "You knew," she breathed. "This whole time." "Not the whole time," Ethan said, crouching down to her level. He looked exhausted, relieved, sad. "Agent Morrison contacted me 3 days ago. Said the FBI had been working with Richard before he died, but they needed Meridian to make a move, a real move, to justify arrests. When you showed up," he trailed off. "I realized you were the catalyst they'd been waiting for." "So you used me," Ellie said quietly. "No." His voice was fierce. "I protected you. There's a difference. Wei was always going to come for you, Ellie. Always. This way, we made sure he couldn't hurt you when he did." "What about Marcus?" Ellie asked, looking at where the scarred guard sat in handcuffs, his head bowed. "He made his choice a long time ago," Victoria said, not unkindly. "But he also fed us information for the past 6 months. Told us when Wei was closing in on you. Kept you alive longer than you would have been otherwise." Marcus looked up, meeting Ellie's eyes. "Your mother was kind to me," he said hoarsely. "Once, when everyone else treated me like furniture. I couldn't save her, but I could buy you time." He looked at Ethan. "I'm sorry. For all of it." Ethan said nothing, just turned away. Agent Morrison approached Ellie, her expression softening. "We're going to need your statement, and we'll need to find you placement." "She has placement," Ethan interrupted. "With me." Everyone turned to stare at him. "I've already started the paperwork," he continued quietly. "Guardian application." Richard left provisions in his will for any descendants of Eleanor Castellano. Ellie is family, and she's staying where she belongs. Ellie's heart stopped. You want to keep me?" Ethan knelt down, and for the first time since they'd met, she saw tears in his eyes. "If you'll have me," he said simply. "I know I'm not your mom. I know I can't replace what you've lost. But you're not alone anymore, Ellie. You have a home, a family, a legacy." He smiled through his tears. "And a really fancy hotel to grow up in." Ellie launched herself at him, sobbing into his shoulder as he held her tight. All the fear, all the running, all the loneliness, it poured out of her in great heaving gasps. And for the first time in 6 months, she felt safe. 3 weeks later, Ellie stood in front of a judge. The courtroom was smaller than she'd imagined, wood paneling and fluorescent lights instead of the dramatic scenes from TV shows. But the weight of the moment was real enough. Her hands trembled as she held Ethan's hand on one side and Victoria's on the other. "Miss Corleone," Judge Patricia Chun said gently, "do you understand what we're here to decide today?" Ellie nodded. "Whether I get to stay with Ethan. Whether he can be my guardian. And is that what you want?" For a moment, Ellie was 7 years old again, kneeling on cold marble, begging a stranger to let her stay. But everything was different now. She wasn't begging. She was choosing. "Yes," she said clearly. "He's my family." Judge Chun reviewed the documents before her. Character references from hotel staff, psychological evaluations, home studies, and most importantly, Richard Celestial's amended will that Victoria had discovered in the hotel's archives. A codicil written 6 months before his death that explicitly provided for any proven descendant of Eleanor Castellano to be placed under the care of my heir and adopted son, Ethan Dawson. Richard had known. Even then, he'd been preparing for this. "Mr. Dawson," the judge said, "you're 31 years old, unmarried, and run a billion-dollar hotel empire. The court has concerns about your ability to provide stable, consistent care for a child who's experienced significant trauma." Ethan stood, his voice steady but passionate. "Your Honor, I was 9 when I lost my parents. 12 when I ran away from foster care. I know exactly what Ellie's been through. The fear, the instability, the feeling that the world doesn't want you." He looked down at Ellie. "Richard Celestial gave me a second chance. A home. A future. I'm asking for the opportunity to do the same for her." "And your work schedule?" "The travel demands. I've restructured my entire executive calendar," Ethan said. "Victoria Ripley has agreed to take on expanded COO responsibilities. I've hired a full-time nanny, background checked and trauma-informed. And I've enrolled Ellie in Westbrook Academy, which has an excellent counseling program. I've also prepared to serve as secondary guardian," Victoria added. "I have no children of my own, Your Honor." Ellie would be gaining not just one guardian, but 2. Judge Chun looked at Ellie again. "Do you feel safe with Mr. Dawson?" "Yes," Ellie said immediately. "Has he ever hurt you or made you uncomfortable?" "Never. He saved my life. And if I grant this guardianship, what do you hope your future looks like?" Ellie took a breath. This was the question she'd been preparing for, the one the social worker had helped her practice. But when she opened her mouth, the rehearsed answer disappeared. Instead, she spoke from her heart. "I hope I can go to school without being afraid someone's watching me. I hope I can make friends and have birthdays and do normal kid stuff." Her voice wavered. "But mostly, I hope I can make my mom proud. She died protecting something important. And Ethan helped finish what she started. I want to grow up to be like both of them, brave enough to do the right thing even when it's scary." Silence filled the courtroom. Judge Chun removed her glasses, wiping them slowly. When she spoke again, her voice was thick with emotion. "I've been on the bench for 20 years. I've seen every kind of family configuration imaginable. And I've learned that family isn't always about biology. It's about commitment, love, and showing up even when it's hard." She looked at Ethan. "Mr. Dawson, I'm granting temporary guardianship for 6 months, after which we'll review for permanent placement. I expect regular reports from the social worker and continued therapy for Ellie." Ellie's heart soared. "However," the judge continued, "I want to be clear. This isn't a fairy tale. Raising a traumatized child is difficult, exhausting work. There will be setbacks, bad days, moments when you question everything. Are you prepared for that?" Ethan squeezed Ellie's hand. "Your Honor, the best things in life are never easy, but they're always worth it." Judge Chin smiled. "Then court is adjourned. Congratulations, Mr. Dawson. You're officially a parent." The gavel fell, and Ellie's new life began. The celebration at the Grand Celestial was subdued but perfect. The hotel staff had decorated one of the smaller ballrooms. Nothing ostentatious, just warm lights and a cake that said, "Welcome home, Ellie," in purple frosting. It was intimate. Family. Agent Morrison attended, presenting Ellie with a framed photograph of her mother, young, smiling, standing in front of the hotel on her first day of work. "We found this in Richard's personal effects," she said gently. "Thought you should have it." Ellie traced her mother's face with one finger, memorizing every detail. "Thank you," she whispered. "There's something else," Morrison added. She handed Ethan a thick envelope. "The evidence your mother and Richard collected? It led to 43 arrests. Meridian Group is finished. Their assets are being seized, liquidated, and distributed to their victims. which includes Eleanor Castellano's estate. Ethan opened the envelope, and his eyes widened. This is Eleanor's inheritance, plus 70 years of compound interest. Morrison smiled. Turns out your great-grandmother was part owner of the original hotel, Ellie. Richard kept her share in trust, waiting for her descendants to claim it. It's yours now. All of it. Ellie stared at the number on the document. More zeros than she could process. I don't need money, she said slowly. I just needed to be safe. Then use it to help other kids who aren't safe, Victoria suggested. There's a girl I know who understands exactly what that's like. I bet she'd have good ideas about how to make a difference. Ellie looked up at Ethan, who was watching her with pride and love and something that looked suspiciously like tears. Can we, she asked, start a foundation or something? For kids like me. The Eleanor Castellano Foundation, Ethan said immediately. Helping children in crisis find safety, stability, and hope. He knelt down. Your great-grandmother would be so proud, Ellie. And so would your mom. As the party continued around them, staff laughing, cake being served, Victoria telling embarrassing stories about young Ethan, Ellie felt something shift inside her chest. For 6 months, she'd carried the weight of her mother's death, her family's secrets, and the terror of being hunted. But standing here, surrounded by people who chose to love her, she finally understood what her mother had been trying to tell her. The key didn't just open a safe. It opened a future, and hers was just beginning. Marcus, who'd received a reduced sentence for his cooperation, sent a letter that Victoria read aloud. Tell the kid I'm sorry, and tell her that her mom's last words to me were keep her safe. I failed at a lot of things, but at least I didn't fail at that. He didn't fail? Ellie said quietly. None of you did. You all saved me. Ethan pulled her into a hug, and for the first time in forever, Ellie let herself believe in happy endings. 6 months later, Ellie stood at the window of her bedroom, with purple walls she'd chosen herself and bookshelves Ethan had spent an entire weekend building, watching the sunrise paint the city gold. The Grand Celestial Hotel stretched beneath her, alive with morning activity. She could see the staff arriving for their shifts, guests heading out for early meetings, the doorman greeting a family with genuine warmth. This building that had once been her refuge was now her home, and she was finally learning what that word meant. Ellie, Ethan's voice called from downstairs. Breakfast is ready, and we have a visitor. She bounded down the stairs, no longer the frightened, skeletal child who'd begged to clean floors, but a healthy 8-year-old with color in her cheeks and light in her eyes. Therapy helped. So did regular meals, a good school, and people who showed up for her every single day. In the private dining room, Ethan was setting out pancakes, his specialty, though they were always slightly burnt on one side. Victoria sat at the table, elegant as ever in a navy suit, reviewing documents with the efficiency of someone who basically ran an empire. And across from them sat Agent Morrison. Morning, Ellie, Morrison said with a warm smile. Hope you don't mind the surprise visit. I have news. Ellie slid into her chair, immediately reaching for the syrup. Ethan had taught her she didn't have to ask permission for food anymore. That this was her home, her table, her family. Good news or bad news? She asked. The best news, Morrison said. She pulled out a photograph. We found Way's entire network. 23 people involved in what happened to your mother and great-grandmother. All arrested. All facing trial. She paused. It's over, Ellie. Really over. No one is coming for you. No one will ever hurt you again. The pancake in Ellie's mouth suddenly tasted like victory. There's more, Morrison continued. She pulled out another document. We recovered Eleanor's personal journals from a safety deposit box. Turns out she wasn't just documenting Meridian's crimes. She was writing letters. To the granddaughter she knew she'd never meet. Her voice softened. To Catherine, your grandmother. Ellie's breath caught. They're yours now, Morrison said, sliding the leather-bound journal across the table, along with photographs, keepsakes, and a letter Eleanor wrote the day before she died. She knew what was coming, and she wanted her family to know her story. With trembling hands, Ellie opened the journal. Eleanor's handwriting was elegant, precise, full of life and hope and love for people she'd never hold. My dearest Catherine, if you're reading this, then I am gone, but you are here, alive, breathing, carrying forward the best parts of me into a future I will never see. What a gift. What an impossible, beautiful gift. I wish I could be there for your first steps, your first words, your first heartbreak. I wish I could teach you to be brave and kind and unafraid of the truth. But life has other plans. So instead, I'm leaving you something else, a legacy of justice, of fighting for what's right even when the cost is everything, of believing that one person can make a difference, even against impossible odds. Be bold, my darling. Be fearless. Be the woman I never got the chance to become. With all my love, your grandmother, Eleanor. Tears streamed down Ellie's face, but she was smiling. Because Eleanor hadn't been writing to Catherine. She'd been writing to every woman who would come after her. To Sarah. To Ellie herself. She'd been writing to family. Thank you, Ellie whispered to Morrison. For everything. The agent stood, pausing to ruffle Ellie's hair. A gesture that would have terrified her 6 months ago, but now just felt like affection. You did the hard part, kid. You survived. Everything else is just paperwork. After Morrison left, Victoria excused herself to manage the hotel, leaving Ellie alone with Ethan. He'd been quiet through breakfast, watching her with that expression she'd learned meant he was feeling too much to put into words. Now he cleared his throat. So, he said, I have something for you too. He pulled out an envelope, official looking, with a legal firm's return address. Judge Chin signed off on the permanent guardianship yesterday, he said softly. You're mine, Ellie. Officially, legally, permanently mine. If you still want that. Are you kidding? Ellie launched herself at him, nearly knocking over the orange juice. Of course I want that. Ethan caught her, laughing, and she felt his tears on her hair. I have one more question then, he said. Would you want to change your last name? You don't have to, he added quickly. Corleone is your mother's name, your heritage, and I would never ask you to give that up. Yes, Ellie interrupted. Yes, I want to be Ellie Dawson. She pulled back to look at him. Mom told me family isn't just blood, it's who shows up when things get hard. You showed up, Ethan. You keep showing up. That makes you my dad in every way that matters. He absolutely broke down then, pulling her close and crying like she'd given him the greatest gift in the world. And maybe she had. 1 year later, the Eleanor Castellano Foundation opened its doors in a renovated building adjacent to the Grand Celestial Hotel. It offered emergency housing, counseling, legal advocacy, and education support for children escaping dangerous situations. Ellie cut the ribbon, wearing a dress Victoria had helped her pick out and standing between Ethan and a photo of her mother. The press was there, naturally, because a 9-year-old philanthropist made good headlines. But Ellie wasn't nervous anymore. She'd learned that her story mattered, that sharing it might help someone else feel less alone. My mom used to tell me that the bravest thing you can do is ask for help, Ellie said into the microphone, her voice steady. For a long time, I didn't believe her. I thought asking for help meant being weak. But then I met someone who taught me that real strength is knowing when you can't do it alone. She looked at Ethan, who was watching her with unconditional pride. This foundation exists because 3 generations of women refused to stay silent. Because they believed truth mattered more than safety. And because sometimes, the people who need help the most are the ones who think they don't deserve it. She paused, looking directly at the camera. If you're scared right now, if you're alone, if you think no one cares, you're wrong. We care. I care. And we're here to help, just like someone helped me. The crowd applauded, but Ellie barely heard it. She was too busy watching the doors open and families walk in. Kids with haunted eyes and parents at the end of their rope, all of them looking for the same thing she'd found on that cold December night. A chance, a hope, a home. Later that evening, after the ceremonies and interviews and tours, Ellie sat with Ethan and Victoria in the hotel's private garden, a space Richard had built for Eleanor decades ago that had been restored to its original beauty. Your mom would be so proud, Victoria said softly. And Eleanor. And Richard. You honored all of them today. I couldn't have done any of it without you, Ellie said. She looked at the 2 people who'd become her family. Either of you. Ethan pulled her close, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. You know what Richard used to tell me? That family isn't something you're born into. It's something you build, piece by piece, choice by choice. Then we built something pretty amazing, Ellie said. No, Ethan corrected gently. We built something perfect. As the sun set over the city, Ellie thought about all the things she'd lost and all the things she'd found. About great-grandmothers who fought for justice and mothers who died protecting truth, and strangers who became fathers simply by choosing to care. She thought about keys that opened more than locks and hotels that became homes, and little girls who learned that asking for help wasn't weakness, it was wisdom. And she thought about the future, her future, stretching out bright and boundless before her. Somewhere in heaven, she imagined her mother smiling. "You did it, baby. You survived. And now you're going to help others survive too." "Hey, Ellie," Ethan said, breaking into her thoughts. "What are you thinking about?" She smiled, leaning into his warmth. "That I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be." "Yeah," he said softly. "Yeah, you are." And finally, after months of running, fighting, and surviving, Ellie Dawson was home. Thank you for being here for this entire journey. If this story touched your heart, please leave a comment telling me your favorite moment. I read every single one. And if you haven't subscribed yet, now's the time. There are so many more stories coming, and I don't want you to miss a single one. Remember, you are stronger than you know, braver than you believe, and loved more than you can imagine. Until next time, beautiful souls. Where are you watching from? Drop your city below.